Imagine an elite engineering academy, a place where only the best and brightest minds are invited to compete. Here, the only thing that matters is genius, and the language spoken is bleeding-edge tech. But in a world completely obsessed with the future, one quiet student is about to prove that the deadliest weapon isn't always the newest one. This is the story of how ancient wisdom, a steady hand, and a truly shocking assignment led to an unbelievable showdown between a simple bow and a military-grade drone. The main lecture hall at the Kestrel Advanced Design Institute was basically a pressure cooker for ambition. In the tiered rows sat some of the most gifted young engineers in the world, their laptops glowing with complex code and wild schematics. They were the ones destined to build our future. And lording over them all was Professor Kalen, a man whose brilliance was matched only by his ego. He didn't see himself as a teacher. He saw himself as a forge there to burn away his students' weakness and leave only hardened, pragmatic innovators. One morning, Kalen walked to the front of the hall with a thin, cruel smile playing on his lips. The project he was about to announce was his masterpiece, a final exam designed to separate the true visionaries from the wannabes. He flicked on the Hola projector and a menacing military robot flickered to life above him. For your final project, he announced, his voice booming with theatrical gravity, you will not build a convenience. You will not design a toy. You will build a functional weapon. A wave of shock, quickly followed by a buzz of excitement, rippled through the hall. The ethical questions were just sort of glossed over. This wasn't about morality. It was about pure capability. Your creations will be tested for power, accuracy, and efficiency, Kalen continued, his eyes gleaming. The target will be my personal KV-7 interceptor drone. The student whose weapon successfully disables it gets the Academy's highest honor and a blank check recommendation to any tech firm they want. The rest of you will be graded on your failure. While her classmates erupted in chatter, their minds already racing with plasma cannons and railguns, one student sat perfectly still. Her name was Enya. Small, quiet, and constantly overlooked, Enya was the polar opposite of her classmates. Her genius wasn't in code or robotics. It was tactile. She understood materials, stress points, and the timeless laws of physics. While everyone else sketched designs powered by volatile energy and complex Enya's screen was blank. She wasn't looking to the future for her inspiration. She was looking thousands of years into the past. In the days that followed, the Academy's workshops became a mad scientist's playground. The place smelled of ozone and hot metal, filled with the sounds of lasers cutting carbon fiber and magnetic coils whining as they charged. Marcus, a student known for his massive ego, was building a miniature railgun. It was so complex, it needed its own cooling system that hissed and steamed like a sleeping dragon. Another student, Lena, was assembling a sonic cannon that could theoretically shatter reinforced glass. Their projects were straight out of science fiction. Weapons of overwhelming technological force, and then there was Enya. Her workstation was an island of ancient quiet in the middle of all the futuristic chaos. No glowing power cells, no tangled wires, no humming servers. Instead, her bench was covered with strips of wood, bundles of animal sinew, and polished pieces of dark horn. Her classmates were baffled. They'd walk by, glance at her strange materials, and share a smirk. Building a catapult, Enya? Marcus sneered one afternoon. Or maybe a really, really fancy slingshot. Enya didn't even look up. She was too lost in her work, her hands moving with a fluid, practiced grace. She wasn't just building a bow. She was resurrecting an ancient art. She was crafting a composite bow, a weapon that had dominated battlefields for thousands of years. The design was a masterpiece of natural engineering, a lamination of wood, horn, and sinew that worked in perfect harmony. The horn on the belly of the bow could withstand incredible compression, while the sinew on the back could stretch to an unbelievable degree. Together, these materials could store and release far more energy than a simple wooden bow, making it shorter, faster, and deadlier. Her process was meticulous, almost a ritual. She spent days steaming and shaping the wooden core into a graceful, recurved shape, a design perfected by Scythian warriors for mounted combat. She carefully glued the horn to the belly with a special adhesive she made herself from boiled fish bones. Then came the sinew, which she painstakingly layered along the back, building up the bow's potential energy with each layer. The whole process was slow and demanding, taking days for the glue to cure properly. Professor Kalen made his rounds daily, offering sharp, often scathing feedback. He praised Marcus's ambitious railgun and admired the theoretical elegance of Lena's sonic cannon. But when he got to Enya's station, he just stopped and stared. He picked up a piece of polished horn, his lip curling with disgust. "And what is this supposed to be, miss?" He trailed off, not even bothering to remember her name. "It's a composite bow," Enya said softly, her eyes fixed on the arrow she was fletching. Kalen let out a short, humorless laugh. "A bow? How quaint. While your classmates are pushing the boundaries of the 21st century, you're playing with sticks and string. Do you have any idea what my drone is capable of? It has reactive armor, a 360-degree sensor array, and can fly over 200 miles per hour. He dropped the horn back on her bench with a clatter. "My dear girl, this isn't bringing a knife to a gunfight. You're bringing a fossil to a drone strike. Don't waste my time with this craft project. I expect a real weapon on presentation day, or you'll get a failing grade that will haunt your academic record forever." He turned and walked away, leaving a ripple of snickers in his wake. For a moment, a flicker of doubt crossed Enya's face, but it was quickly replaced by quiet resolve. They didn't get it. They saw a primitive tool. She saw a perfectly efficient energy transfer system. They saw wood and sinew. She saw millennia of refinement. While they struggled with buggy code and overheating power cores, her weapon was simple, reliable, and powerful. She spent her evenings in a deserted gymnasium, practicing. She learned to feel the wind, to judge distance, to become one with the bow. Each arrow she fired was a whisper of defiance against a world that had already ridden her off. As presentation day approached, the tension in the academy was thick enough to cut with a knife. Students were putting the final touches on their futuristic gadgets, each one hoping to be the one who toppled the professor's drone. Enya, meanwhile, was applying a final layer of lacquer to her bow, a weapon that looked more like art than destruction. The stage was set for a confrontation between the old world and the new, between brute force tech and elegant, timeless design. And what happens next is something no one saw coming. But before we get to that final showdown, if you're enjoying this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales just like this one. Presentation day felt less like an exam and more like a public execution. The students gathered in the academy's massive, state-of-the-art testing arena. In the center of it all, on a raised platform, stood Professor Kalen, looking down on them like a king. And beside him, hovering silently, was the KV-7 interceptor drone. It was a sleek, angular machine of black alloy and glowing blue lights, its multi-lens sensor swiveling around the room with an unnerving, inhuman intelligence. "Welcome," Kalen's amplified voice boomed, "to the final test. Today, we'll see if your theoretical brilliance translates into actual power." One by one, the students were called to the floor. The results were a mix of spectacular ambition and even more spectacular failure. Marcus was first. He hauled his massive railgun into position, and the device hummed ominously as it charged. He aimed, and with a triumphant yell, he fired. A deafening crack, a flash of blue light, and the projectile screamed across the arena, missing the drone by a good 10 feet and burying itself in the wall. The recoil was way stronger than his simulations predicted. Kalen sighed and marked something on his datapad. Lena was next with her sonic cannon. A low hum filled the arena, quickly rising to an ear-splitting shriek. The students winced, covering their ears. The drone, however, barely moved. Its sensors detected the sound waves and instantly emitted a counter frequency, neutralizing the attack completely. Lena's weapon was useless, and so it went. A laser rifle shorted out. An automated turret couldn't get a target lock. A swarm of mini drones was effortlessly fried by the KV-7's localized EMP. With every failure, Professor Kalen got smugger. His drone was invincible. His point was proven. Finally, he called the last name. "Enya, A." Hush fell over the arena as Enya walked onto the floor, carrying her bow and a single, perfect arrow. No power cables, no targeting displays. Just her, the bow, and the arrow. The students in the stands started whispering, some of them hiding laughter. It was just an absurd sight. Kalen looked down at her with pure pity. "Well, Miss Enya," he said, his voice dripping with mock sincerity, "let's get this over with. You've brought your stick, ready to accept your grade? "I'm ready for the test," she replied, her voice clear and steady. Kalen's eyes narrowed. He saw her confidence as insolence. He decided to humiliate her. "Very well," he sneered. "A stationary target is clearly too much to ask. Let's see how your little toy handles a moving one." With a few taps on his controller, he sent the KV-7 soaring. The drone zipped through the air with breathtaking speed, performing barrel rolls and impossibly sharp turns, its blue lights leaving streaks in the air. It was a clear display of dominance, meant to show how outmatched she was. It buzzed right past her head, the wind from its thrusters rustling her hair, a blatant taunt, but Enya didn't flinch. She stood calmly, her eyes tracking the drone's erratic flight. She wasn't watching the whole machine. She was watching its central processing unit, the core of its movements. She saw the patterns in its random flight path, the tiny hesitations as its eye calculated the next move. To everyone else, it was a blur. To her, it was a dance, and she was learning the steps. She knocked the arrow, the familiar motion calming her. She raised the bow. The arena went silent. Kalen watched from his platform, a smirk still on his face, waiting for the pathetic failure. Enya took a deep breath, pulling the string back to her cheek. The bow, a product of ancient knowledge, bent gracefully, storing a tremendous amount of kinetic energy. She ignored the drone's frantic zipping and zagging. She was waiting. She anticipated its path, a flicker in its flight that told her where it would be a split second from now. The moment came. The drone banked sharply, exposing a ventilation port on its underside, a tiny, almost invisible weak point in its armor. Enya released the string. There was no explosion, no flash of light, just a soft thrum as the bowstring snapped forward, and the near-silent whisper of the arrow slicing through the air. For a split second, it looked like she'd missed, the arrow flying towards an empty patch of air, but the drone flew right into its path. There was a sharp thwack, followed by the sickening crunch of the arrowhead piercing the drone's chassis through the vent. The arrow, propelled by the immense power of the composite bow, drove deep into the drone's core. Sparks erupted from the wound. The drone's blue lights flickered, then turned a deep, angry red. It wobbled, its movements suddenly spastic. Its engine sputtered, died, and then, with a final, pathetic whine, the KV-7 interceptor drone, the pinnacle of Professor Kalen's pride, fell from the sky. It hit the arena floor with a deafening crash of shattered alloy and broken circuits. Silence, absolute, stunned silence. The students were on their feet, mouths open, staring at the wreckage, and then at the quiet girl who stood there, her bow held loosely in her hand. Marcus's railgun couldn't hit it. Lena's sonic cannon couldn't scratch it. But Enya, with a weapon made of wood, horn, and sinew, had destroyed it with a single, perfect shot. Professor Kalen was frozen. The smirk was gone, replaced by a slack-jawed look of pure shock. He slowly walked down to the floor and knelt beside his broken drone, the arrow sticking out of it like a defiant flag. He pulled it out, examining the hardened tip. He looked at the arrow, then at the elegant, powerful curve of the bow in Enya's hand. He had mocked it. He had called it a fossil. But in that moment, he finally understood. Innovation wasn't just about inventing the new. It was about perfecting the old. Enya hadn't relied on gigabytes of data or unstable power sources. She had relied on fundamental principles: balance, tension, energy transfer. She proved that a deep understanding of the fundamentals could beat a shallow application of complex tech. The deadliest weapon wasn't the one with the most microchips. It was the one in the hands of the person who understood it best. The whispers started again, but this time they were filled with awe. Enya was no longer the quiet girl in the back of the class. She was the one who shot the instructor's drone. She had taught the entire academy, and especially her professor, a lesson they would never forget. A new question now hangs in the air. What happens when the military tech firms, who just watched their best drone get taken down by ancient technology, come calling for Enya? So, what do you think happens next? Let me know in the comments below, and we might just continue this story in a part 2.